let's talk about Vancouver though, because they're like the complete opposite. Like we didn't have high expectations either for them coming into this season, but we got our expectations really, really, really high over the past 2 or 3 months. And post Neptune, they were a revelation. They went to 2 grand finals of the majors. They went to the minor grand finals. They beat FaZe multiple times. They gave LIT everything they could handle on a few occasions, and they look like a true contender until this weekend. This was an abomination, I would say. Of course, their winners bracket match is like, all right, like that's a tough matchup to have against
Yeah,
LAT round one.
yeah,
I get that. I did not expect them to win by any means. At that same point, though, you cannot lose to LAT 3-0 and then go down to the losers bracket and lose to the Vegas Falcons. I don't care if Optic has lost to the Vegas Falcons. I don't care who has lost to the Vegas Falcons this season. You are a team that was widely considered to be the third best team in the CDL and a grand finals championship Sunday contender. You cannot lose to the last place team in the league in the final major. They lose game 5 to Vegas. They get knocked out top 12 finish along with Boston, C9, and Carolina. 3 teams I do not want to be associated with on a consistent basis. Where do you see Vancouver now that this happened at the last major of the season?
a crazy thing about that statement you just made is as 3 of those teams that got 12 at Major 4 are actually qualified for champs.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, last season Optic gets top 12, and then they were still in champs. But I would have to go back and look to see how many times that's been the case where multiple teams that qualified for champs come in last at the final regular season major.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Um, but regardless of all that, I just think that's like, overall for Vancouver, I have a pretty similar outlook on the tournament as you. Like that first round matchup against LAT, that was always going to be a tough matchup for them. We went in depth on the preview show about it. They've struggled uh, this season, even with Neptune in the lineup. Whether it's a best of 7 or a best of 5, they've struggled against LAT. So wasn't expecting them to really come out on top in the winners bracket, but I did say, like, because of that first round matchup in the loser bracket with Vancouver, and I believe, yeah, if they won that match against, or sorry, I think I said Vancouver, the first round loser bracket matchup against Vegas. Because of the bracket, the way the loser bracket shook out, I said, like, even if Vancouver lose to Thieves and winners bracket, they drop down, they have a good chance to go on a long loser bracket run because of the way the bracket uh, played out, and that's just not the case. And I think that's just really like the loss to Vegas. I believe this is their only win on land of the year. Um, that's just for a team that's been
Yeah.
in 2 grand finals of the past 2 events before this one. Really, just unacceptable is the only way you can put it. And it's kind of like, I know it's just a small sample size with this one match in particular against Vegas, but like really, like Vancouver's thing since Neptune has been in the roster, they've been really good at hardpoint, and they won both hardpoints against Vegas, who just Vegas hasn't been a good hardpoint team this year, and they haven't been a great team in general, but really, like, whether it was the All Saudi roster. I guess when Pred, Priest, and Arcides first came into the roster, they did find some moderate success in hardpoint compared to the previous roster, which found absolutely no success in hardpoint. But still, I would think, like, you know it's a team that you expect Vancouver to win the other modes in outside of hardpoint, which they've been so good in against every team, let alone a team like Vegas that's had their struggles in the mode this year. So the fact that they get Neslo'd by Vegas is just it's I guess really concerning has to be the best one word to describe it, because like that they're losing to a team that's one of the worst teams in CDL history. And even if you don't want to go that far, it's just they lost to a team that's not at champs, and now they're going into champs. They are playing teams that objectively had better seasons than the team they most recently lost to. Um, so it's definitely got to be concerning for Vancouver. I do think, they have they've shown what they're capable of this year. They have the coaching staff with Rambo there to try and put in the work and fix any issues they've been having behind the scenes potentially. Um, so I'm not totally writing out Vancouver just yet, but I mean they're gonna be tested right away because it is champs. Only 8 teams there, the best of the best this season, and they're going to be tested right away at champs with a matchup against Miami, who we're just talking very highly of, and we were just talking about Miami and how good they are at search, and that's if Vancouver's losing 2 searches to Vegas, Miami's got to be looking at this like we just got to win 1 respawn and we're chilling, right? If Miami like wins 2 respawns, they're like, yeah, series is over. It doesn't even have to go to a game 5. So um I don't know. It's definitely just. Oh, I did not expect to be having this conversation about
Yep.
Vancouver heading into Major 4, even with that first round matchup against LAT. Definitely, still thought they could have made a run to uh, the finals, but I will be interested to see how they respond. I guess we're getting ahead here of uh, the champs bracket, but if the teams just drop down to like they do in the first round of the majors here, if Vancouver loses to Miami and then LAT Boston is the other matchup in their like quadrant there of the top bracket, if LAT beats Boston, we have Vancouver versus Boston for, in the first round of the losers bracket. That's a matchup where I'm sitting here like, I still would pick Vancouver right now just because both of these teams. I mean, I've been picking against Boston for
All
a while
season.
now, but that's besides the point. I mean, that's like it feels like similar narrative wise to Vancouver dropping down to play Vegas last event where I'm saying like, yeah, they got a favorable matchup even if they lose round 1 of winners and they can go on a loser bracket run, but like I don't know if I have the same amount of confidence now that they had that same opportunity at Major 4 and they really just didn't take advantage of um, that matchup there in the loser bracket. So I don't know what's going to happen here for Vancouver. Um, my bigger thing overall for Vancouver, and really, I guess this doesn't necessarily matter a ton for our listeners, but it will if they are involved in like the fan voting for any of the awards and stuff. I just when we're considering um Neptune in particular, or just any of the Vancouver guys for like the all-star teams and whatnot, I really just I don't think just this one hiccup at Major 4, which it is a big hiccup. There's no way around that. I don't
Mhm.
think that should take away from the impact that Neptune had on this Vancouver team and literally how he completely revitalized Vancouver as a team and just completely changed their season after joining the team following Major 1. Um, so I still think, we'll inevitably talk about this more, but I still think we've outlined like um the all stars and whatnot, and especially for SMGs, I think it's pretty clear cut that it's in no particular order. Most likely Simp, Hydra, uh, the first team all stars SMGs, and then Jodeci's Neptune as the second team all stars. But now I feel like with that recency bias, it's the same thing we talked about with Scrap. He's got the 2 tournament wins, the last 2 tournament wins, and the 2 individual MVPs. I feel like because those 2 wins came so recently to when this voting will be happening,
Yeah.
that recency bias might play to his advantage. I think, on the other hand, this top 12 finish could like sort of sway some people to not vote in favor of Neptune being a potential all-star, and I think that would just be something I can't get on board with.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. If you are voting on these all-star teams, just look at it from the totality of this season and kind of take the timing out of it. And maybe you think Simp or Celium or one of the phase guys that's the MVP, and you don't think that Scrap is, or vice versa. Just look at it from, okay, They each have 2 major wins. They, MVP, the count, obviously Scrap has 2. These other guys have 1. Take it just as the count and not like, when did they do this? Was this 4 months ago versus 4 days ago? Like, don't take it like that, because, and I think you have to look at what Vancouver was before Neptune and what they were after. And he has the greatest, if you had like in terms of like actual most valuable, because LAT is like this incredible super team. Like, it's kind of hard to say like, well, this guy is like the most valuable because, if you think Scrap, for example, is the most valuable, you could make a great argument still that Hydra is the most valuable because look how great he is and look how, especially when he elevates his game, how much better LAT is as a result. The best case for value really is the before and after. And you don't get that with everybody because not everybody comes into a roster mid-season, but Neptune did. And now you can look at him and say, well, this is Vancouver. They were kind of dead on arrival to begin the season, and then afterwards were these contenders, at least for a little bit. Obviously the end of the season was not great, but if you said post Neptune that they would have a top 12 finish and then 2 grand finals appearances at majors, I think you would take that regardless of the order in which it came. So yeah, obviously don't really consider the timing on that. But back to Vancouver, the hard point, I mean, just in general, let's think about this. That LAT series was as dominant of a series that I can remember Vancouver and LAT having. LAT has swept them a few times. They even swept them in the grand finals. Those maps in general have been very, very close, and Vancouver's been competitive in a lot of those maps. It was not competitive whatsoever, and that's alarming. Like, if LAT and Atlanta have that kind of series where like LAT just runs away or Atlanta runs away and it's a 3-0 sweep, it's a DoorDash special, whatever you want to say, that would be concerning. For Vancouver, combined with the subsequent loss to Vegas, that's bad news. That is not anything that like. They're going to be so hard to pick in the pick'em, to be honest, because of this. Like, this is kind of the same deal with Toronto going into this. Like, you lose the Optic. Like, I don't know how good Optic is. I don't know like what to think of Toronto going into this. You said I don't know what to think of Optic going into this. Like, if they played any other team than Toronto, I wouldn't know who to pick. Vancouver, I feel the exact same way. Like, they play a very, very good team right now. Miami has been incredible really recently. Vancouver, like, that is, man, that's going to suck. Like, I kind of don't want to pick that match at all now because I think it would have been a pretty simple, I'll go with Vancouver, but I can definitely see Miami. That probably would have been my exact wording if this happened pre-Major 4. Now it feels like completely different with how I think about that matchup. Granted, if they do lose and they drop down to Boston, they've been very dominant against the Breach this season. I think they're 4-0 with Neptune. And but still, Boston is Boston, and they've had these moments. And I should mention the Breach, their best game mode is hardpoint. So when, granted, they're not nearly as good in hardpoint as Vancouver is, or I guess was at one point. But Boston, that's still like their bread and butter. Like, they usually, if they're going to win a series, it's probably going to be through hardpoint. And that should be scary for this current iteration of Vancouver and its fans. So I'm very concerned about the Surge going into champs. Granted, they have several weeks to figure it out. I'm sure Rambo will be on those guys about improving over the next month or so, but man, that's a really bad finish to a otherwise incredible regular season for the Vancouver Surge.